hit like and subscribe. You're watching the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel.
Peace, family. This is your brother, Marc Lamont Hill. Welcome to Night School. Every night here on the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel, we hold Night School, where we break down the most controversial subjects, the most interesting debates, the most engaged subjects going on in the world today. And tonight is no different. We got a bunch of good stuff to talk about, and I am excited to talk about it. This week has been crazy. We're talking about domestic stuff, international stuff, pop culture stuff, political stuff. That's what the conversation has been around the country, indeed around the world. And so that's what we're going to talk about tonight. We're not going to be here for a super long time, but we are going to get into a handful of topics that I think are important. And my favorite part, because it's Wednesday, is that I brought on some people who are going to have the conversation with me. I'm going to go from the far right. I mean, on the screen, not politically. I'm talking about my brother Kino. Kino is a brilliant entrepreneur. He is a music manager. He is an industry executive, industry veteran. He also has a product, the one that you see on that hat, which is amazing. I'll tell you about that. I'll let him tell you about that a little bit later, because it then got me in some interesting situations. You also sometimes see him on the Joe Budden podcast, where he weighs in on a string of subjects. He's a great dude. He's from Detroit. I'm telling you before he does, because you can't talk to anybody from Detroit for more than 30 seconds before they say, I'm from Detroit. So I just want to get that.
Or Philly.
Or Philly, that potentially, or we just wear shirts to say John on it. Kino, good to see you, my brother.
Good to see you as well, brother. Good to see you as well.
And in the middle is a night school veteran. She has been one of the long distance runners here on the show. She shows up often, and she shows out always. She is brilliant. She is wonderful. She is a professor of women's and gender studies at The Ohio State University. She's the author of 2 books with a third to come. My favorite of hers, although they're all really good, is her book, America Goddamn, which we'll put up on the screen in just a minute. But she thinks and talks about a range of subjects, not just the scholarly stuff. She gets into the pop culture stuff, and she was a 90s kind of girl, so she loves to talk about R&B and hip hop and all that stuff. So we're going to get into all of it tonight. Please give some love to Dr. Treva B. Lindsay, DC's finest. So y'all, I want to start with some heavy stuff. Not get it out of the way in the sense of I don't want to talk about it, but I want to make sure that we cover what's been going on all week here on the channel. And honestly, since day one on October 7th, we've been talking about Gaza. But today, the Pope spoke out. Pope Leo the 14th gave an address. And in the address, he said that he was calling on Israel to, quote, end the terror, destruction, and death in Gaza. The word terror is interesting. The word terror, destruction, and death in Gaza. This was in his weekly address. He backed church leaders in Jerusalem who condemned Israel's order to evacuate Gaza City. Israel said, everybody get out of Gaza City, which is an order that they often give, and not just in Gaza City, but all throughout Gaza. But the problem is when you tell people to get out of a place and they ain't got nowhere to go, or you tell people to get out of a place and you're shooting them, or you tell people to get out of a place and buildings are crumbling, then they're going to die. Everyone seemed to understand that except the state of Israel. And so the Pope spoke out, as did the church leaders from Jerusalem, to say enough. I think that speaks for itself. I think what I want to talk to you all about just a little bit is where you think we are as a society, as a country, as a people, maybe, around this question of Gaza. 2 years ago, everyone was like, thoughts and prayers, hope everybody's okay. Actually, no. 2 years ago, it was on October 7th, it was pray for Israel. Then it became like pray for everybody. Then it's what the F is Israel doing? And now you're hearing the Pope use words like terror, destruction, and death. It seems to me like the conversation is changing in everyday spaces. I don't know if I'm right or not. Kino, I'm going to start with you. What are you seeing? What are you hearing? What are you feeling?
Well, first and foremost, man, I wanted to reach out to you, and I apologize for not reaching out to you because you made a very powerful statement on the podcast where you were like, all of my colleagues and friends have been murdered. And what I think what we fail to realize is this isn't a political issue anymore. This isn't a social political issue anymore. This is a human and spiritual issue, right?
Mm.
One of the greatest things I think Brother Malcolm X said was, he said that when you look at atrocities like this, when we think about slavery or Malcolm said it like when there's a rape, you don't just look at the raper. The raper just isn't affected. The rapee is also. So I think what we're looking at is a spiritual and human issue. I don't think anyone gets out of this unscathed. I don't think any of us who are watching can ever unwatch. I don't think those who are going through it will ever be the same. And I don't believe those who, right or wrong, or who are looking at this has become a world issue, man. And honestly, it is so above my pay grade in terms of the political sense, but on a human sense, like, we have to figure out how to resolve this conflict, because this isn't just about Gaza or Israel anymore. This is affecting everybody.
So that's an interesting place to pick up, Treva, because I think for so long, to Keno's point, we only talked about Israel. What's good for Israel, what's bad for Israel, what Israel's doing, what Israel's not doing. But the idea of talking about the victims of Israel's actions was almost unimaginable. There was a time, I remember Peter Jennings told me, or he didn't tell me, I'm sorry. Someone told me that Peter Jennings told them, and I eventually verified it through reading, that, Peter Jennings once talked about sort of how in his early days of journalism, you couldn't even say the word Palestine. You could say Arab, but you couldn't say Palestinian on network news. I mean, that's how far from a just discourse we were in. Now, people are not just saying Palestinian, they're actually saying, what about the suffering of Palestinians? What about the death of Palestinian children? What about the death of Palestinian adults? It's a different conversation. I think I hear Keno saying it's not a political issue anymore. I think it is a political issue, but it's not. I think he's right that it's not just a political issue anymore. We're talking about that, and we're also talking about what it means for people to be dead, what it means for people to be suffering, what it means for people to be starved. What do you make of that shift in the discourse?
There's a part of me that wishes we were having a different conversation years, decades ago about Palestine, about Palestinian suffering, even the fact that you couldn't center Palestine in that conversation, and that you had to qualify where you stood with regards to Israel in order to be able to even affirm the humanity of Palestinians. I'm heartened to see many more people across the world calling this out, calling the US in, calling other Western nations in. It is heartening to have someone who is the religious leader of a massive kind of religious sect to say it is terror. Did stop short of saying genocide, but to have the words of terror and destruction, because that in fact is what it is, and it has been, not just since October 7, 2023, but for 70 plus years of displacement, of dehumanization or attempts to dehumanize that, and also Palestinian resistance. And so I think it's really important in this moment for us who are in positions with platforms to not only not be silent, but to continue to amplify what is happening, to be committed and tenacious in naming what's happening unapologetically and unabashedly. There are consequences for sure. We still see that. I'm on a campus that's banned chalking for fear that someone might write Free Palestine on
Wow. Wait, so you can't put anything on chalk on the ground?
You can't talk on OSU's campus at all.
That is crazy.
One of our newest, biggest kind of sponsors for our team and everything is a huge defense contractor that has huge contracts with Israel. So at the moment where I see the world shifting and public discourse shifting, we're seeing institutions like colleges and universities double down, continue to criminalize and demonize those who would speak out for Palestinian humanity. And so I think, and for our humanity, I think to Keno's point, like, who are we as human beings that we witness this and don't say something and don't acknowledge the level of terror and destruction that has occurred?
And that's what, Mark, not to cut you off, but That's for my biggest thing is when I think of the political structure, I don't discard it, but this is a human problem now, right? And we've seen this time and time again. We've watched, when they use the word society as a whole, take the black struggle and turn it into a civil rights struggle, but it was a human rights struggle, right? And so we've continuously watched humanity as a whole. I don't care what color you are. I don't care what race you are. I don't care what gender you are. I don't care what you claim, what flag you represent. This is a human problem. And so before I give the political system all the weight, there's a lot of weight that goes against us that looks at this and we say, why are we afraid to speak about it? What are we afraid to lose? Where we are as a human race? Because when it's all said and done, and if you believe in anything greater than yourself, when you get to wherever you want to go, can you tell whatever your higher power is? I didn't speak up because of my political affiliation. I didn't speak up because of my color. I didn't speak up because of where I live. We all have to be accountable. And I truly believe that it's not to discount or discredit where it's coming from, but I believe ultimately the bigger concern is we are in a human crisis, and it's across the board for me.
It's also important to say, as a country, the United States isn't just a kind of entity that's watching it, and we as American citizens aren't just people who are bystanders to this. We fund it, right?
Absolutely.
Israel could not exist as an imperial superpower or as an imperial force if we didn't fund the weapons, if we didn't fund the defense deals, if we didn't provide diplomatic cover as well. I mean, every time people want to hold Israel accountable in the global community, you go before the UN Security Council, for example. You go before, 5 countries got veto power. One of them is the United States. So what ends up happening is the U.S. just always basically absolves Israel of any wrongdoing, from settlement expansion to war crimes. And all of it comes under this. There was a question here, and someone said colonial, not imperial. I think it's both, right? I think because there's a way the United States,
Great Britain had they've been at this since the very beginning. So Great Britain, as well as the U.S., have had very strong positions in this fight.
Absolutely. It literally was like a baton being passed from Britain, right, in the British Empire, more particularly to the U.S. Empire, which is why it's imperial. But I agree, it's also colonial. We have to be honest about that. And it's settler colonial, to take it even further. There was one more. I want to move on to another topic, but there was a question that came that I did want to acknowledge, because we are night school, and so we are also answering these questions. Jazz LP Dallas is fine to say, good brother Mark / panel Peter Jennings, why was it forbidden to even say the word Palestine at the time? Part of the U.S. media was attempting to, as U.S. media does with all issues, sort of reflect, but also impose a certain kind of politics. That happens when we're talking about gun stuff. It happens when we're talking about environmental stuff. It happens when we're talking about education stuff. They set the terms of the debate. And so the word Palestinian for a lot of people was questionable, because we were using the word Arab at the time to describe all the Palestinian people. So the idea, and if you go to Israel right now, on your national identity, not your is Arab or Jew or Druze, but it's not Israeli. So you don't have an Israeli nationality, you have a Jewish nationality or an Arab nationality, not Palestinian, because part of the Zionist narrative is that Palestine is not a country, Palestine is not a place, that it's not a legitimate entity. Part of the Zionist narrative coming in, the kind of mantra was a land without a people for a people without a land, right? Or a land without a people for a people without a land. The idea was that Palestine, when there was a Zionist intervention or invasion, rather, that they were going to a land without a people. Now, it didn't mean that there were no people there. They weren't arguing that the land was barren, although some people took that argument. The argument was that there were no people, there was not a people there, that Palestinians didn't represent a people, that Arabs were replaceable, that Arabs were interchangeable, that they didn't have a distinct culture, a distinct language, a distinct anything, that they were just a people. It would be like if you took black people here and just dropped them in Brazil, or just dropped them in Ghana right now, or just dropped them in Djibouti right now. The idea was that they weren't a distinct people. And you even see that in these comments where someone said that the Jordanians and Egyptians should take in more of the Palestinians, as if because they're all Arabs. That's the argument. They're all just Arabs, so just put them anywhere. And so that becomes part of the narrative. And so part of how that agenda gets advanced is if you don't say the word Palestinian. And when the word was Palestinian was said, particularly in the 70s and 80s, it was associated with terrorism. And so if you heard Palestinian, you thought PLO. If you thought PLO, you thought terrorism, as opposed to the legitimate representation or representative body of the Palestinian people, which was ultimately a resolution that came during the peace accords. But that's another conversation for another time. I don't want to get too deep into it, but I did want to give that context so that people understand why we're doing what we're doing.
And also, I think a big portion, I know we need to move on from this, but also a big portion that I want to say to the young lady who had the question is, it's about dehumanizing the human experience, right? So the less I see you as me, the less I see you, then the more callous I can be. So it allows me to now look at you and say, you are not me. Therefore, you don't bleed, you do not feel, you do not have the same experience as me. And that's why I say it's much more of a spiritual thing for all of us, because we're dealing with a human problem.
Let's talk about this other story that just happened. It might seem like a small story, but it's also a big story. First of all, we about to talk about Taylor Swift, so some people are going to feel uneasy. Dr. Lindsay, was it you that? Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my God. Kino, I did an interview
a decade ago, and I still get Swifties hating me.
I don't even know what you said about Taylor Swift. It was when I was hosting HuffPost Live. We were streaming HuffPost Live. It wasn't even that crazy, but it was literally been over a decade ago. But whatever you said about Taylor Swift, they ain't like it. And Swifties don't play. So I'm gonna be very clear here. I ain't got no beef with Taylor Swift. Me and Tay cool. I love her albums. I'm actually a fan. Don't judge me, y'all. I see Kino's being on his best behavior, and Treva can't control her face.
Listen, I don't listen. If you want to be a fan of mediocrity, if you want to be a fan of
come on now.
I mean, it just is what it is.
We're gonna act like Tay ain't got no hits. We'll get back to her music. We'll get back to her music.
It's a talent, it's two different things.
Because we're gonna talk about her gift right now, or her blessing right now. She and Travis Kelce are blessed to have entered a new phase of their relationship.
Absolutely.
Anyway, let's talk about Charlie Kirk, because he's been in the mess of all this. Anyway, Charlie Kirk uses Taylor Swift's engagement to lecture about submitting to Travis Kelce. If you don't know him, his name is, again, Charlie Kirk. He's a right-wing activist. I'd say a racist, among other things, but he couldn't resist turning Taylor Swift's engagement into a culture war sermon, where he declared that he hopes marriage will, quote, make her more conservative. Now, he has a show. It's called Real America's Voice. And on that show, he congratulated Taylor. He congratulated Travis Kelce. By the way, if you don't know, Travis Kelce plays for the Kansas City Chiefs. They're a lesser-known football team that I think they may have gone to the playoffs last year.
They got a quarterback that does all right.
They did all right, but I think they didn't win last year. They lost. And,
they did not.
Who did they lose to?
Maybe.
Wasn't
maybe.
It'll come to me. It'll come to me.
Fly. Let's go.
Right, that's all I'm saying. But he congratulated the Chiefs star. But then he pivoted. He did what most of us do, right? We give the shout out, and then we use their lives as a platform to talk about the shit we want to talk about anyway. He said he wants Taylor Swift to, quote, reject feminism, and also to, quote, submit to her husband. Charlie Kirk said, and I quote, "This is something that I hope will make Taylor Swift more conservative, engage in reality more. She should have more children than she does houses, or than she has houses." Now, of course, you know, he's always been slamming Taylor Swift for being woke. And he speculated that her politics came from being unmarried and childless. Mm-hmm. He even mused that she could go from cat lady to JD Vance supporter now that Kelce is in the picture. Dr. Lindsay, you are perfect to have this conversation.
Childless and unmarried?
No, a feminist and a scholar.
Are you an average dancer too?
Look, so what I mean, this is wild to me. I mean, this commentary, this attempt, it's so insistent on this culture war, whether we're talking about Cracker Barrel, we're talking about this moment of trying to tell Taylor Swift who she should be and that her existence, while woke, which if Taylor Swift is woke, Lord, are we in trouble?
Right.
For those of us who actually have progressive politics. But I think it's so fascinating because I think they're so enraged that this tall, thin, blonde white woman who's attractive, who has all of these fans and all of this kind of clout within popular media, is not supportive of their agenda, that she's not a trad wife, that she's not she is not someone who has presented herself in a particular way that conservatives could easily latch onto, although many of them continue to go to her shows and be fans of her music. I think it's really important in this moment that she gets under their skin in the way that she does. It is something I find hilarious. I think white supremacy and patriarchy have always had such an intimate and fucked up relationship. And I think it's really telling that someone who is a racist is using his platform to tell us that misogyny, patriarchy, and sexism are ideal ways of moving through the world. And that Taylor Swift is who they want representing that for them, just like that. So I think it's just a lesson for those on the left that if you always thought there was this great relationship between white supremacy and patriarchy, you were right. You were right. They're bedfellows. He is a total racist weirdo. I agree with you. A true weirdo.
I was on the internet, however. I made the mistake of going on the internet. And some people were saying that marriage is inherently something that makes you more conservative, that it's a conservative institution.
Sure.
And that while if you take the woke stuff out, that there's something interesting. I don't agree with the statement. I'll be very clear. That there's something interesting about the conversation about submission and what it means to submit to one's husband, particularly given people's faith traditions, given people's understanding of what marriage is or what marriage is supposed to be. Obviously, I don't want nobody submitting to me. Not that I have a say in that matter, but even if I did, I don't want that to happen. Kino, you've been married. You think about these issues. You talk about relationships. You think about relationships. Where's your head when you talk about this?
Well, I think submitting and serving and being conservative can all mean the same thing, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's a political thing, right? Mark, I mean, I hear you speak about your marriage all the time, and the way you speak about it is you serve your wife, which means you can be a servant to her. If you were partying or you were living a certain lifestyle, and now you're changing that lifestyle to fit the confines of a healthy marriage, then yes, we become more conservative. That has zero to do with political views. That has zero to do with racist views. That has zero to do. She should be.
I just don't be outside.
Listen, you know what? I was just having this conversation recently. Being a servant to your community, being a servant to your wife, being a servant to your parents when in need, there's nothing wrong with that. We are naturally here to serve, right? We wake up every day. Mark, you called me today and you was like, "Hey, yo, listen, I want to do this talk because of my respect and love for you. I'm here to serve you, right?" And that doesn't mean that I have to be subservient to all of your views and opinions, right? But in this moment, I'm serving it. I'm trying to.
Yeah, I'm with all that. I mean, I see that as partnership more than service, but in terms of relationships. But I agree with your point in terms of like what service mean. I guess my question is when they say it though, they don't see it. I don't think they see it as bi-directional. I think they see it as women should be serving men.
That's part of their agenda though too, right? That's part of their agenda. And the reality of it is white women have always been subservient to the agenda of American politics that were whether it's against them us or anybody else, they've always figured out a way to fall in line, and they have to deal with that. But the racists on the right who have racist views and ideologies, who want to draft Taylor Swift into their ideologies and are upset because she won't. That just comes along with the fodder of where we are in media.
That's a really interesting point. Tree, let me bring you back in, and I want you to respond to anything you've heard that you want to. But there is something interesting about saying Taylor Swift is. I mean, there's Drake, right? I know you're a huge fan. There's Drake, and then there's Taylor Swift. I mean, Taylor Swift in terms of the Universal catalog.
Absolutely.
And the Universal, yeah, like Taylor Swift is another level.
Mm-hmm.
She's the biggest thing going. She's rich, she's famous, she's powerful, she's influential. It's interesting that they want to see her as a submissive person. It feels like, is it too much to say they want to break her? Not just for who she is, but what she represents.
Well, I think she's, an affront to patriarchy. I think she's an affront to the kind of misogyny. Like, we're talking about people right now who, many of them don't believe women should vote.
Damn.
Right? Like, this is not.
You back on that again?
They're upset that, like, there's a point in my mom's life when she could have an ATM card and a point in her life when she couldn't. Like, there's real, like, pushback when they're saying make America great again and we're going to get back to these core values and things like this. And so you have this white woman country singer, right? Country pop singer who's so popular and, and just aesthetically and what she looks like and what she could represent for them, and wanting to be able to capitalize on that by having her kind of parrot these trad wife kind of aesthetics and this trad wife kind of politics. That is absolutely a desire for that. And if we're not making that real connection between what white supremacy is, what patriarchy is, then we get this talk of submission. And I know when they're talking about submission, they mean like go in the house, don't do as much work,
barefoot and pregnant, right?
Handmaid's Tale.
It is not even if we're talking about it in a kind of Christian context. And I think, again, some folks got some really terrible theology and real terrible interpretations of that. That has a very different conversation even than what they are saying. So I just think they're trying to politicize her for their own gain, and her refusal is something, I think it's a kink for them, quite honestly, to like kind of diminish her and try and break her. I think there's something very tantalizing about that for men on the right to be able to do that to Taylor Swift.
Her base is undeniable, right? Her base is undeniable. So if you want somebody in your team, it has to look like what they feel that she would look like, right? So when we think of the ultimate black woman, we may think Beyonce. We may like the way Beyonce. So if we goes into a war, we want Beyonce on our side. They're looking at a war of race, a war of politics, a war of control of America as we know it or as we've known it. And Taylor Swift fits the bill. I'm not upset with them that they're trying to do it. It's a chess move. We have to see what they do. How does she respond to it? How does Kelce respond to it? Right? Like, how does her husband respond to it? How are they responding to not only their power base, but their morals and values and what things should be? We all know it. The world is going to go in one direction. And there's a fight to figure out what direction that's going to be. But I mean, we're already moving in that direction.
Well, don't let them break you, Tay. I'm here with you. I'm here for you.
Mark got your whole collection.
I do. I was listening to folklore the other day.
Take it off, Tay. See, I know a song.
That's one of the good ones. See, but
that's the one that got me in trouble.
That's true. That's true. That is true. That is true. Let's move to another story. One of y'all favorite people, Candace Owens.
I love Candace.
Fix your faces. No. We're not
Candace.
going to do this. We're going to fix our faces. We're going to have a mature conversation.
I love Candace. Pour the wine.
I need it.
I listen. This new Candace thing, I'm going to be honest.
Hold on. Let me read the story for the audience so they can at least know what we're on. It's been about a month, y'all. And I don't know if you know the story, but Emmanuel and Brigitte Macron launched a defamation suit against Candace Owens, and they did it for good reason. I'll tell you why in a second, but I just want you to know that the podcaster herself, Candace Owens, is flailing just a little bit. She admits that she can't afford the millions, she says millions in legal fees that her lawyers estimate the case will cost. And she's now hawking $30 free Emmanuel t-shirts and hats to her followers. Now, if you didn't know exactly what she's being sued for, let me say, the first family of France basically are upset because for months, Candace Owens was peddling a story that the first lady of France, Brigitte Macron, was born a man or born a boy, born male, and that she has been hiding this secret. And for some reason, this has become a super interesting and important and urgent story for some right-wing conspiracy theorists. They asked her to stop. She wouldn't. And eventually, they filed a lawsuit. Now, people didn't expect her to be sued because they figured, well, it's France and they're far away and they're too rich and famous and powerful to care about what Candace Owens is talking about in America. Well, it turns out they don't like it, and they did it. So anyway, even though she's hawking these t-shirts to make money and to fundraise maybe for a legal defense, that has stopped her from pleading with President Trump and J.D. Vance to intervene on her behalf, calling the French president a, quote, foreign invader. Now, Candace Owens is not happy that Donald Trump hasn't stepped in on her behalf. I'm not surprised, but she's not happy about it. So she floated the idea that the U.S. military pressured him, Donald Trump, to tell her to drop the Macron story, suggesting the former president is under the thumb of a military junta. The reason she's saying that is because at some point Donald Trump did call Candace Owens and say, yo, knock this shit off, stop it. Now, some people say he did it to help Candace. Other people say that Macron told him that, yo, get your girl. Either way, she's not backing off of her conspiracy theories. In fact, she has doubled down with increasingly bizarre claims, even speculating that Brigitte Macron
is her brother.
Participated, basically, that she participated in the Stanford prison experiment as part of a CIA mind control plot. I'm not even going to get to the rest of it. The point here is that Candace is saying wild shit, and Macrons aren't happy about it. I don't know where to start, Treva. First, this story that the first lady was born male, I don't know why they keep telling the story, and they keep assigning all these so much meaning to it, but it's not clear what the meaning is. And then the fact that she's getting sued, I kind of like it. You know, I don't want to see anybody go broke, but I kind of want to see her not winning this. Okay. What say you, Dr. Lindsay?
This is so ridiculous. She is so ridiculous. And that's really it. I mean, it's such a transphobic whole thing, even in the way that it's being talked about, even the case itself, it's all really just ugh. And all of the players,
it's really gross. Yeah,
all of them are transphobic, like including the Macrons. Like I'm not, because that's not about Brigitte being assigned male at birth, right? It's about saying like like the part of me is like, and if she were, like, I don't, what would that mean and or do? Like, it's really that part of it at that level of what we talk about transphobia. But now that we are saying you're just telling a lie over and over and over again, and people are saying like, stop telling this lie, Trump back channeling, stop telling this lie. And so you just tell more lies, and now you selling merch to try and cover legal fees. And I don't know how much merch you got, but I'm doubting it's gonna cover these legal fees. And the Macrons have both time and money. So when you got time and money today, this is just, I don't see the end for this. Like, I don't even see practically.
I think the game was she could get a lot of views, make a lot of money. She didn't think that the Macrons were going to say or do anything. She thought that they're so big that like nobody was going to intervene, because before they intervened, she would get 1 million views, 2 million views, just saying, here's a proof.
Right. Yeah. It just seems like at a certain point, where do you tap out and realize that you have neither the time nor the money to keep this going, and that you could just come up with a whole host of other lies, I mean, and other theories and like just keep their names out your mouth. Like that actually is an option. You keep a whole bunch of other people's names in your mouth, and you keep a whole bunch of other lies and conspiracies in your mouth. So why this one and why the digging in is baffling to me.
Nicole Davis said this is retribution for her shit talking about George Floyd. Again, Candace had a conspiracy theory about George Floyd and why he really died, basically saying that the police didn't kill George Floyd.
And nobody said anything. No, there was no pushback. There was no caring.
Absolutely. Claire Alden says assigned male at birth is a terminology. Absolutely. I think what I was, if you mean me, I was trying to use the language that Candace was using to kind of point out how she's talking about it. She's talking about like a scandal. That's really a man. That's really a boy, which again ignores trans identities, ignores the social construction of identity, and makes it seem as if. Anyway, that's a whole other conversation.
When I hear Candace talk about it, because I wasn't initially, I was definitely against Candace, anti-Candace for a long time, probably until around the Joe interview. But what I've been seeing her do lately, her and is it Tucker Carlson? Is that the other guy?
Mm-hmm.
Tucker Carlson, and what's the kid out of Chicago that's making a lot of noise? The young kid. It's another one. It's Tucker Carlson. It's another guy. It's like three people. I wish I could remember his name. It's not important right now. But the interesting thing about what I see, the difference between the three of those is very clear. One, although Candace, I believe, has always identified as being Black, she's never identified with the Black struggle as of publicly.
No.
She's now in the forefront of the Black struggle. This is when I say media. None of these other people are saying the same types of things are being hit with her. We don't see the white journalists say the things they do, and now it's sounding as if she's losing everything. I don't think her asking someone to be honest about who they are in their history is transphobic. And maybe the idea is it's not her business, and maybe that shouldn't be the platform she's running on. But the reality is, we are often, when I say we, Black and brown people are often called every name that she's being called, whether it's conspiracy theorists or whatever else, anytime we question the power struggle of white people.
But what's the value? Here's why I think it's transphobic. One, she's not just saying that this woman was assigned male at birth,
Yep.
which just wouldn't be our business regardless. But she's saying it as a moral failure. She's saying it as, aha, I got something on you. She's basically saying, if there's a piece of information about you that the public doesn't know, and once they know it, they will know that you've done something wrong. She's framing it as you've done something wrong. It would be like if we said, Donald Trump, he's really actually 1/8 Black, but we're not saying it like as a sign of pride. We're saying it like, he got some. You get what I'm saying? As if the right were to say Donald Trump was 1/8 Black and saying it as evidence that something's wrong with him, that would be racist. It wouldn't just be pointing out.
Could she be saying they're wrong because of the deception? If it's true, the deception they're using.
But what's it? Well, go ahead, Treva. I'll let you.
So when someone's assigned male at birth and then is a woman, there's no deception there, right?
There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right? Like there's no deceiving act, right? You are assigned something because of genitalia. That's an assign that's within like science is saying this is what we're going to dictate. That's what the medical says. If I see a penis, you're a male. If I see a vagina, you're a female, right? That's all it gives. It doesn't tell you if it's a woman, if it's a man, if it's going to be a boy. It doesn't give us any of that information.
Absolutely.
So in her saying that there is no deception, like even if Brigitte Macron was assigned male at birth, there's no deception that happens.
No.
As her saying like that she's a woman. So like it's a non
unless
thing.
Unless some of the things she's alluding could be true. And if that's the case, just say, hey, this is me. This is what I was assigned at birth, and this is my choice today. And this is fine.
Well, why does she owe the public?
Or she could say, it's not your business. And it could be left there.
Right, but also you could just say like, this is defamation to say something about me, right? Which was like, one, to like be in my genitalia, which is already weird anyway, to be all up in somebody's genitalia you don't know, and don't have consent to be talking about or anything. Like, all of us get to have presumed genitalia because of how we present. And so now we're taking that away from somebody by demanding that now, because anybody can just say, I think you had a vagina at birth, so tell me. Like,
I need some proof about your genitalia.
proof is
But
anybody
we're in the space of people having opinions and being able to express those opinions. I believe as long as it's in a respectful manner. Now, if they argue that it's not respectful, listen, we just had a great conversation on Palestine. However, there may be some of our brothers in the Jewish faith who may feel that not only are y'all not Israeli or Jewish or Palestinian, who gives you the right to speak on us? Like, at some point,
that's a conversation we have to have. By the way, Kino, are you on a laptop?
yes.
If you could lower your headroom a little bit, just because it looks like just so we all look like the same height. I
am taller.
That's the funny part. You're actually taller than me, but somehow in this thing it looked like we were studying. I don't want to look like that height wise, but I think there's an interesting conversation to be had about people speaking for people who have been representing people, etc. But I think we also and people in the comments have talked about this. That context does matter here. Candace Owens spends a lot of time talking about transgender people as if they have a mental illness. She's talked about it as a moral failure. She's talked about it as a sin. She's talked about it as what God doesn't want. So it's also against that backdrop that when she says, I think that's actually a dude, that she's actually invoking a lot of things. One, she's conflating sex and gender in ways that are problematic. She's ignoring how someone chooses to identify. But also, let's be clear, she's making this shit up. Like, let me take that back. She's not making it up. She's not that original. She actually heard other people say it. Right. And then she's echoed it. Because it's just like it's not just like, but it's similar to Obama with birtherism, where people were starting to say, I don't think he's from here. And then suddenly people said, I'm going to look into this. Before Donald Trump is saying Obama's not from here. And someone could clearly say, well, it's not racist to ask those questions. It's just a question. We're just trying to verify where they're from.
Absolutely.
But the question, you get what I'm saying? But the question itself presumes that something's wrong.
There was a racist undertone to it. However, when we see the backlash, meaning the lawsuits versus the two, there's a clear difference between the way she's being treated and the way anyone treated Donald Trump in that same way, right? So I don't know what I see it as is whether, and again, I like her pivot, but what I don't see is nobody's protecting her. And again, she has to be accountable for her own voice, her own decisions, the things she said.
What should she be protected from?
Right.
This isn't a lawsuit thing. This is nothing but different. This is no different from the Inquirer, no different from the Star from back in the day, right?
You're saying it's just like it's the normal kind of.
This is sensationalized journalism.
But maybe we shouldn't do that. But maybe if more people did get sued, they stopped doing it.
But we've been doing it. It's always existed. Sensationalized. It happens in Europe. Obviously, Princess Diana got arrested dead, lost her life through paparazzi. The idea of sensationalized journalism has always existed. To speak about her as if she's an outlier, she's saying something or doing something that we've never seen, that's not fair to her.
No, if you're saying, okay, please.
I don't think it's about whether she's senior. It's like if she's doing something terrible and has had a record of terrible and being harmful to a lot of people, that I think it's going to be hard pressed to get anybody concerned about protecting her from folks she's been ridiculously hateful and harmful to over the years of her career, right? That's singular here. But also I think calling out, and there have been moments now where we have seen people sued. We saw this with Meghan Markle and Prince Harry when they sued white journalists who made up and said libelous things about them that we could say was sensationalized, right? And actually won some of those cases against individuals who were doing this kind of work. Like, this goes back to, I think, like, who do we want to be and what are the standards we want to have? Like, right. I don't want to hold standards in the Latin community that suggest that saying harmful things about people that come from a harmful context is okay because white people get away with it. Like, I don't want anybody getting away with it. But Candace Owens also has a record that tells me that she is not planning to pivot to being less harmful. Like, that's actually not the pivot that she's made. She has a different backlash coming at her because of different things, but her own words, her own behaviors suggest to me that I'm still going to be harmful. I just might be harmful in this context versus this prior context. But being harmful is not something I'm ever going to be comfortable protecting or riding for.
It's an interesting conversation. I'm going to move on. I agree with Kino about one point, which is I don't want her to be the beginning and ending of our commitment to suing people who make shitty lawsuits or who make shitty news coverage. In other words, it's easy to take her and make her the scapegoat for this whole thing. It's easy to take her and only punish her. I'm not sure that would be because she's black or because she's a woman or because she's conservative. I think it's just because the Macrons got money and power and reach and decided that not today, not on my watch. But that's not it. I can't ignore the issues of race and gender, even if it's happening to somebody who I don't care for politically, who I don't agree with politically. So I think we do need to be mindful about not making her the only person who gets this kind of treatment. But I think we should resist the argument that it's always going to be this way because it's always been this way. I'd rather say, look, history shows us that when journalism is as irresponsible as it is in this case, people like Princess Diana die. Kids commit suicide. Social media causes people to do harm. I mean, we're going down the list of things. And when you talk about the way trans youth are treated in general, but especially on social, in social media and in school and in these other places where the suicide rate is super high, we could say, hey, all of this needs to be done differently. And again, I don't love the courts being our mechanism for doing it.
Sure.
But something has to give. Something has to give. Let's move to something joyous. Something that will make everybody happy. Cracker Barrel. That they are going back to the original sign. They cracked.
The crackers.
They said, I see what you did there. They said, look, we heard you loud and clear, and we are going back to our original logo. Kino, you like Cracker Barrel?
Absolutely. I actually like Cracker Barrel. That's a staple for me. I'm Cracker Barrel over Waffle House, believe it or not, when I hit the South. I am. I'm Cracker Barrel over Waffle House when I hit the South. I am.
I mean, I was with you on Cracker Barrel because I was like, that hash brown casserole be hitting.
Come on, and they got the games in there. You go in there, you
be hitting. I'm not mad. It's just a lovely dose of Jim Crow and salty goodness. But the Waffle House is so important as a Black cultural institution.
No, but it's not consistent. Every Waffle House doesn't.
Agreed.
It's terrible.
I disagree. Every Waffle House I've been to, there was a fight. Everyone.
Exactly.
I never been to Waffle House where they weren't fighting.
Waffle House. I will not disclose where because I don't want any shit starting. But I have a consistent Waffle House there I love and have never witnessed even an argument.
Give it to us offline then.
Yes, you better put that in the chat or something because I eat it all the time in Atlanta.
Outstanding. It is one of the cleanest restaurants I've been. It is.
But that's my point. That's not the Waffle House standard. That's my point. You can go to a great Waffle House and you can go to another city or another town over, and it's not a great experience. So
I will agree with that. Cracker Barrel is consistent in both its general store and colored and white's water fountain vibes. It is consistent. I go, so I'm not.
Listen, I love the casserole. I love the food. You know what? I want to acknowledge the CEO for even trying. Right? I can't remember her name, but from what I understand from things I've read, her ideology was to make it a lot more. To update it, to change some of the nuances, to make it a little bit brighter and a little bit more acceptable to the younger generation.
Yes, I'm gonna show. Let me pull up the because y'all need to see.
Did we ask for this? This is my question. I'm just asking this genuinely. Like
this was absolutely a solution in search of a problem. Nobody asked for
okay,
this.
I was like, I did not know if I missed a meeting of the blacks and we advocated for a change in the Cracker Barrel logo. I did not know, so I just wanted to be.
They should have took the cracker out, huh? They should have left the guy and called it the barrel.
The barrel.
So everybody you see on the left there, first of all, it's called Cracker Barrel. To me, to your point, Kino, if anything about it is invokes racism, it's the word cracker. But I get that's not what they're talking about. So Cracker Barrel, there's an old white man on the steps there, looking real Jim Crowy. I'm with you. Old country store. The word Cracker Barrel, old white man. I get why people say it might invoke something, and that's like what they just, like you said, Kino, they wanted to get a younger crowd. They wanted something clean, something fresh, different font, but nothing too far from the original. First of all, what did you make of the change, y'all?
You know what's crazy about this? If you really think about the comparisons between whites and blacks in America, we rallied to change the imaging of Aunt Jemima, or to change the imaging of Uncle Ben's. They tried to change. They like, no, we're okay with our ancestors. We want to keep them. But there was nothing wrong with this. You know what, man? As a CEO of a company, man, when you look at $100 million loss, there's nothing she could do. We're looking at like, and I want to say that, you know, when they looked at the entire loss, it was close to 100 million. In any company, if you're a shareholder in that company, like, that's grounds to being terminated. It just is what it is. So I applaud her for where she is, but I think that just shows, whether we're talking about Candace Owens or Palestine or anything that we've talked about, especially within the fabrics of this country, right? The right wing MAGA Republicans want, when they say "Make America Great Again," it's exactly that. That is what they want. And that is why they need Taylor Swift, because Taylor Swift can make a song and make it sound so pretty, but really they're moving. And so it's unfortunate, man, because I think anybody who's trying to be progressive, for us as a society, and to watch them being punished or reprimanded for, I mean, it just shows us how much further we have to go.
Dr. Lindsay, first of all,
Cracker Barrel cracks.
when you see, I did that myself. I'm proud of myself. When you see Cracker Barrel there, does this rise to the level of Uncle Ben or Aunt Jemima when it comes to the racist meter?
No, I never cared. I mean, I'm someone who had ate a Cracker Barrel, more so because of like Cracker Barrel's like history with discrimination, and like there's some real reasons to be mad at Cracker Barrel and to think about Cracker Barrel. The logo never hit me as the thing, and as somebody who would spend her summers in North Carolina, Old Country Store connects to me because that's what you had, and that's what you went to. Had a little bit of everything. That had games, that had perishables, that had non-perishables. There might be a little restaurant in it. Like, those are familiar. So I never looked at it. I knew when I was going to Cracker Barrel, I'd be like, oh, the crackers in a barrel. Like that, I already knew, like, I'm stepping into a particular kind of aesthetic, a particular kind of mindset, a world. And I made a choice. I just was unaware that there was something brewing about Cracker Barrel in 2025 that would make this change now, especially in light of the backlash that has arisen around like DEI and making these shifts and all of this. Like, it just seemed, unfortunately for the person at the helm, like I think from the company, just a bad calculation, right? And just read the room wrong about what needed to happen with regards to their logo. I think it was just a bad read, unfortunately.
Am I the only one who looks at that logo though, and look at the original Cracker Barrel and thinks that guy is saying, "Hurry up, nigger, I'm tired." Hurry up, nigger.
But the thing is, was it stopping niggas from going to Cracker Barrel? Wow. Like, really, was it? Like, I think the history of Cracker Barrel and
Right.
discrimination and its treatment of people certainly would have kept people out there. Like, I still ain't been at a Denny's and I can't even think how long, right? Even though I know
Yeah.
things
And think
Right.
about how shameful we are thinking about Denny's. When Jay-Z said, "Never eat at Denny's and party like little pennies." Like somebody as influential as Jay could shift our ideologies.
As he should have.
So imagine what Taylor could do for them. That's why these types of figures are so important to these guys.
So maybe you can get Tay to come and step up and do something on some of this racism in the food war. I don't know if Cracker Barrel would be the first place I would target to Trevor's point. I'm interested more in the racist practices, the racist hiring, like Denny's actually wouldn't serve us. You know what I mean?
like, that was wild. I mean, it's kind of wild. I was like, but Cracker Barrel was like, oh, it's the old country store. I know what I'm getting. I know what I'm walking into. It does have that feeling that he is absolutely, that man probably was a lot of places that were not good for my ancestors. I don't doubt that. Right?
And as a black person, if we're honest about it, there's some of us that thinks that much racism probably makes the pancakes better. We don't want to say that.
Let me tell you something. If I'm gonna trust some white people to make my Southern favorites, the deeply racist sometimes ones be better. Now, there's some other ones and some exceptions to that, and riding for my white folks in Appalachia, my Cajuns, my other folks who can just burn and do that. But the white folks who can really burn in the South as well often do that with the side of just a side of white supremacy coursing through their hands.
A little Jim Crow in there.
I've heard
a little bit.
White Southern segregation. It feels a lot different from Northern segregation. Like it's a lot more in your face. A lot of times they don't really necessarily feel like they're racist, but they do feel segregated, right? But then you start to look at different nationalities around the world, like when they come to America or abroad, they don't always like to intermingle either. So there's a history between blacks and white in America, and it makes it a lot different, right? We have a history of this, but the ideologies of people not necessarily wanting to mix nationalities, that's not new and it's not different.
It is not different. All right, I got to talk to y'all about my girl. And this is one of my favorite things about women's basketball and about Dawn Staley, but especially about women's basketball. I'll tell you what I'm talking about. Dawn Staley did an interview recently where she addressed the fact that she was, in fact, interviewed by the New York Knicks. We know that Tom Thibodeau, who was the coach of the New York Knicks, was fired. He was replaced ultimately with Mike Brown, a strange choice, but that's a different conversation for a different time. But Dawn Staley was on a podcast called Post Moves. That's with Candace Parker and Aaliyah Boston. Y'all know Candace. Y'all know Aaliyah. Y'all also know Angel Reese did not rock a T-shirt showing Candace Parker looking like the GOAT that she is. But that's a different conversation too. Anyway, Dawn Staley stood up and said, I interviewed for the Knicks. She acknowledged it. She said, it was the same interview that everybody else that was in their candidate pool got. Same thing. I thought I did pretty well. I was well prepared. There's no surprise there. If Dawn Staley shows up for anything, I don't care if it's a thumb wrestling contest, she's going to be well prepared and she's going to win. Shout out to Dawn Staley, North Philly's finest. We love you. But she said something else that I thought was interesting. She said, if the Knicks would have offered me the job, I would have had to do it. Mm-hmm. Not just for me. It's for women to break open that. And it's the New York Knicks. And I'm from Philly, but it's the freaking New York Knicks. She said a couple of things that I think were interesting. I'm just going to read a couple of them real quick. She said, one of my questions was, because she said, she said, I shot myself in the foot, maybe, during the interview. And she said there was one question that seemed to change how the team viewed her during the process. She said, one of my questions was, if you hired me as the first female head coach in the NBA, how would it impact your daily job? Because it would. It would. Because you're going to be asked questions that you don't have to be asked if you hire a male coach. There's going to be the media. There's going to be all this stuff that you'll have to deal with that you didn't have to deal with and don't have to deal with when you hire a male. That got them to thinking. That really got them to thinking about maybe she's right. I felt that the energy changed after that. She said, I felt the energy change after that. So I shot myself in the foot by being inquisitive and asking all those darn questions. There's a lot here. Naturally, we're talking gender, we're talking women, we're talking sports. Kino, I'm going to start with you.
It's interesting. The only answer I can give to that is they haven't hit their low. The Knicks organization hasn't hit their low.
That's a fact.
Black people and Black women especially, they have to have nothing else. I believe, at least historically, it's always looked like when those type of changes are made, they have nothing. They have nothing to gain. And so, and they have everything to lose, or they feel like they don't have anything else to lose rather than everything to gain. She should have had the job. It could only been upside. A losing season with her as the head coach would have just been an amazing and incredible spike in revenue for them. The fact that they just didn't do it.
You're thinking like a CEO right now. I have some basketball questions, but about whether she should be head coach, but I didn't want her to be head coach. I had a different thought about her. I think she's capable. I think she's talented. I think she's better than who they chose. I think she might be better than who they chose. And New York is such a big spotlight, and they're so close to the verge of a championship, but they're also so far from one that I feel like she would be the scapegoat. I feel like she would get blamed, even though she's an excellent coach. And I feel like I would love to see her do the Larry Brown approach, where you go to a team that's decent and make them better. You go to a team that's good and make them great. You go to a team that's great and you make them champions. I think she has that kind of talent. I don't know if the New York Knicks at this moment have the patience, and because of their executive structure, where they just don't have strong leadership, I'm just not confident in them enough to want Donnie to be in the middle of that mess. That's how I see it. But I don't know. Tree, what do you say?
That's a really great point. Yeah, both of y'all make great points. I mean, often Black women are brought in when like everything's already hit the fan, and then we got to play cleanup or do this. And this is such an interesting position because it's not necessarily a cleanup. It's like we're on this precipice. We were right there, and then it slipped away. So basically, if we just change out this piece and do something, we should win it next year, right? Like, and so if she doesn't, it's just expectations that I think are wholly unrealistic and also not honest about all of the things that need to happen in the organization for them to actually become NBA champions, right? So I want what Don wants for her. I think she's right. It would have been an incredible breakthrough for women in coaching, women in sports. I'm thinking about Becky Hammon at the San Antonio Spurs before she took the job with the Aces. Like, I want to see more of these women who are absolute champions, who know the game, who bring us back to the fundamentals of the game, who are compelling and interesting and bring so many like great skills as coaches and as former players to the MMNBA. But I don't think this was her job, but I hope some other opportunities do arise soon within the MMNBA for someone like a Dawn Staley to take advantage of that and to really make that kind of splash, make that kind of history. And, I don't see it being long before we see a woman with a ring in the MMNBA and the WNBA.
You might be right. Kino, do you think that NBA players would follow the leadership of Dawn Staley or another woman coach?
So that's what I was going to ask you guys as well. Do you think because they are, I mean, they should be in the finals next year. They are poised to be in right there. There's obviously Cleveland is looking really good. We don't know what Boston is going to do. So New York should look really well next year. Do we think? I don't know if those guys, but Dennis Dawn, man, she's such a respectable coach. I think that I think they would listen. And it's like, listen, it's a bunch of young Black men, or they're good age Black men on that team, man. We listen to our mothers, man. That's a weird toss up, man. I don't know. It's a risk either way. But I would have loved to see her do it. But I honestly think, man, I think there's a level of respect that we as Black people have for our women in those types of scenarios, and I do think it would be a great chance that they would follow.
What say you, Dr. Lindsay?
I'm inclined to, believe that there could have been some good synergy there. I'm partial. I think my fellow Sidwell alum Josh Hart would have done well under her system.
That's
But
interesting.
but yeah, I mean, I think it's always tough. It's like, I think ideally I would love to believe that we're in a place and that these younger folks would have engaged her in a certain way. I think what her demands are and who she is as a coach, and then her being a woman being that, could bring up some things and some dynamics. But I also have just a tremendous amount of faith in like Dawn Staley. Like I think she's such a unique person. I don't think it could be any woman in that position, even with her credentials. I think there's.
I agree. I don't think it could be Pat Summitt. I don't think it could be Gino or Armiana. I don't think.
Yeah, it really is very specific to Dawn. That I'm like, if someone was gonna have that shot, I could see Dawn having the best shot at having that kind of
sure.
with the players, right? She's
the only other
respected and beloved.
Absolutely. The only other person in that conversation is Becky Hammond, who obviously was an assistant at Spurs. But in general, that ain't it. We got a couple comments coming in before we take our last question. Lord Smith said, "Is Marc Lamont Hill PSA offering a PSA for me?" Thank you. Thank you for your question, Hannah. We can't get to it tonight, but we will get to it because I think we should talk about Tigray. And I'd love to talk about your interview. I haven't seen it yet, but I will watch it so we can talk about it because I'm very excited about it. Rick, Mr. Tattoo. Has anyone watched the series? Watch the series about Brigitte grooming him since he was 14. His mother took him away from her at a young age. Watch the series, please. Okay.
Executive produced by Candace Owens.
Let's see here. Ricky, Mr. Tattoo said the person's genitals surrounded by pedos. That's the point of all this. Jesus is king. I don't know what that means, but they did pay to have that said. Tanya Tamika said, classic case of caring more about genitalia instead of grooming her husband, had to send a dude away because of it. This is factual. That's another point. If you're going to say something about Brigitte Macron, there's shit to be said.
Absolutely. That's the thing. I'm like, we could have left the transphobic. This is one of those things, whatever we actually can talk about sexual predation, we can talk about grooming, we can talk about violence and uneven power dynamics. We can have a real conversation. If you had left the transphobia over there, that's a whole different kind of moment. But because you are transphobic,
it's the only kind of conversation you can have. There's literally no other room for it. All right, y'all. We had a conversation last week on the Joe Budden podcast that I'd like to extend just for a couple minutes. And that was about hip hop. And I think, where did it begin? Was it like, what would hip hop look like in 100 years?
Years, yeah.
And you said something interesting. Tell people what you said.
I mean, I think hip hop will probably look a lot like what rock and roll and R&B has looked like in 100 years. The telltale sign for me of gentrification is anytime you take one or two artists and it starts to change. So and I know we got into the sales thing of it, but for me, when you look at Eminem as the highest selling rapper of all time, and then when you look at Drake second, who identifies as Jewish, we're already in the process of it, right? And so when we think of rock and roll, and you think of Little Richard, and you think of some of the other greats that started rock and roll, the change of rock and roll was when they gave Elvis Presley the crown of king, right? When watching R&B change. So for me, I think hip hop will 100% be gentrified, and I'm watching it every day, becoming more and more.
Yeah.
Mark when got some more wine. Yeah. So,
but I think you're right. I mean, I think we're at that precipice, right? Where like hip hop is, 52 this year, right? By that kind of like demarcation of 1973 as this birthday, right, for hip hop. And so, and with that, at that moment, you're marking and looking at these best-selling albums, looking at these best-selling things, best touring artists, people when they're named most impactful and all of that. And so you're seeing a shift. You're seeing a kind of larger range of what is considered under the kind of kind of umbrella of what it is. So there are a lot more artists who are from a lot of communities who weren't necessarily kind of founding folks of that or pioneers of the genre who are the best selling, the most commercially viable, right?
And my career starts with Eminem. Before
Right.
anything, like we all came up together, and I'm not saying this is his agenda.
Of
I'm not
course,
saying
yeah.
this is what he wanted to do. But when you think of Eminem, and when you think of all the records that's come through the culture, to think that he is the only rapper in the top 10 of all time selling artists. And behind him, I want to say last I checked was about 20, 21, 22 million records. Behind him is Drake, who
Right.
identifies as a Jewish male from Canada. Like our culture is no longer represented. When you think of the gatekeepers traditionally of our cultures, whether it was Russell Simmons, whether it was Irv Gotti's, Puffy, Suge Knight's, like we've had so many gatekeepers, none of them exist anymore. All they're either dead or have been ostracized, with the exception of Jay-Z, who's an amazing ambassador for the culture, but he can't move everything for us. So now when we see someone who looks like a Sexy Red, who is doing a music video with Drake rubbing on her stomach, we've never seen that level of disrespect for the black woman in the process of birth. You would have never seen Lauryn Hill doing that with a random other rapper. You've never seen Little Kim and Foxy Brown didn't go that far, and we've always had a balance. So I always say when you look at what gentrification looks like, at first you start to tear down the neighborhoods. You start to show that the neighborhood is worthless, right? And then you start to move in other aspects, and you grow from there. So to think that hip hop will look like what we've grown up to make it look like, we would be we would be naive when we're talking about a culture who has taken someone like Jesus Christ and they gave him to Michelangelo and he turns him into his white lover. It's like we can see time and time again where everything that has power and influence is always pushed over to something else. Rock and roll was the rebellious form of music, and what ended up happening, it became gentrified. R&B as we know it, when you're talking about love, Chris Brown is a genius. But the average R&B singer now, the girlfriend has to have a girlfriend. Somebody has to get high. Somebody, like, you don't hear Adele or white singers when they sing about love, the dysfunctionality that comes along with the type of love we talk about. So what happens is we're starting to now teach love in the black and brown homes, to think that in order for a man to be fulfilled, his girl got to have a girl. Like, and it's not to say that any of those things are bad. The ideology of a functioning relationship, whether it's same sex or different sex, there needs to be some level of commitment. We don't sing about that in our music anymore.
And I wonder with that, I mean, I think that there's a lot of forces as to why that might be and why what is, what becomes mainstream, who becomes successful with those narratives, with these kind of what I would consider like pathologizing and really like just dysfunctional narratives about Black life. Because there are artists who aren't doing that, right? But they're not the ones that are breaking through. You got to go find them. You got to dig in the, now we would say, we were digging the crates. Now they're like going online to kind of find and see, or search it through Spotify, whatever kind of platform they're using to be able to find the artists who are trying to do something different, who are trying to maintain certain kinds of traditions. And I know, I mean, I've always said, as someone who's always loved hip hop, grown up with hip hop, like hip hop has not always been kind to Black women. Like that's never been a thing that I thought, like from day one, it had really good gender sexual politics. I've never felt that. However, I think
It
whether
had
that,
balance.
huh?
Would you say it had some balance?
No.
Even
No. I don't think it's even about a balance. I think for a long time it was deeply homophobic, deeply sexist, and misogynistic. I don't think
Absolutely.
that's, and I don't think that's calling it out. It's still a space that I found home in, because my church was also misogynistic and sexist. So it wasn't shocking that something that's coming out of a space where all of us are coming and pulling from the different influences and things that we have to do that. But I've been told that bitches ain't shit but hoes and tricks for decades.
But you were told that, but you also had a Lauryn Hill, you also had a Queen
Sure,
Latifah.
but then
So you have balances.
But that in no way balances. Like
We don't
there's
have,
so
you think,
many more narratives than
you
that.
think we have a balance now?
No, I mean, I've never felt a balance, right? Like I've never felt a balance. I think it's never like having a singular person that we can name that counters that narrative of a thing. And even if I were to name all of the women artists, and it shouldn't just be women who are speaking positively about women, right?
And it's
Like
not,
that,
and it's not, and it's
no,
not.
no, no. And I don't think that's true now either. Like I don't think it's singularly anyone's one, like women have to stand up for women and be the one saying positive things. I think in a dynamic in all of our communities, like seeing the way we speak life into each other is to speak affirmatively to each other. I think hip hop has had moments where it's done that, and it has had moments when it hasn't. I think we're seeing that the most commercially viable in this era absolutely does that. But if I'm thinking about what I grew up listening to, a lot of it was horrendously disrespectful to me, and I still liked it.
And isn't that amazing that we can create and release and profit off of our pain, or someone else can profit off of our pain and make us believe that we're profiting, but we can't profit off their pain.
No,
in any way, shape, or form, right?
No,
So
I mean, I think it's definitely. I mean, the commercialization of this and aspect of this is like who gets what. Absolutely,
yes, I think
it's an issue. And I think, but I think even if I'm holding my own community accountable, right, for like what are the narratives that we want to say, right? Because I still think there are choices we can make that are different, even within a terrible system, right?
Yes.
Like, and there's some real bad ones being made right now, which is why I completely agree with you that in 100 years, it's going to be like, what is happening? Like, I'm glad I'll be here in 100 years to see where that is.
There's a theory that say, all humans are innate responses to chase pleasure and avoid pain, right?
Sure.
Now, the unfortunate thing is if you have two painful experiences, then what do you choose? You're going to choose the less painful of the experiences, right? And so when you give our community two painful experiences, the exploitation of our community or living in poverty in our community, right? What are most of these kids that don't come from structured homes or homes where education is the number one priority? What are these kids when you give a 50, 100, 250,000, $500,000 check to exploit versus starving, possibly not being
I get the choice, right? I get that choice.
And it's a horrible choice. It's a
horrible choice. But I also think there are a lot of rappers who also didn't make that choice too, right? Like who didn't have to make that choice.
They probably didn't come from where we came from. The reality, and I think that's how you begin to gentrify it, right? You begin to get people who look like you, who begin to say, well, this isn't that bad. Because there was a moment where hip hop was, even if we were talking about the atrocities in our neighborhood, there was this thing of you would speak about it from a either teaching or a learning or trying to explain it point of view. Then it really went into the glorifying, right? And by the time we got into the glorifying process, that's the most profitable. That's the most profitable part of hip hop, right? Now what happens, what we're seeing is they're literally taking any pillar, anyone who could educate out of the system. So when I see a Puff going to prison, it's not to say he didn't do anything wrong, because he did a lot of things, right? When I see a Suge Knight in prison, when I see a Andre Harrell dead, when I see a L.A. Reid who doesn't have the same status in the culture as he once had, what I'm seeing is you're starting to see the gentrification of our culture. And now it's time to bring things in. We were just calling women bitches, which wasn't great. But now the women are so hypersexualized. If you are outside of our race and you look at hip hop as a whole, it's like, oh no, why would we respect these women? Look how they carry themselves. Why would we respect these women? Their men don't even respect them, right? I think all of those are the things when you start to see not only who who's at the top of the food chain, but how things are starting to disseminate, right?
But I think the hard part about that is that every man you named, with the exception of Andre Harrell there, did really harmful shit, right? Like, did really harmful things. Like, really harmful things, and usually to women.
So did Clive Davis. So did David Geffen.
No, I
I'm
don't
not
agree with
excusing, and
that.
I'm
But
not
saying
excusing
that
none of
white
that.
people did terrible things doesn't change that those black men did
No,
terrible.
no. And you're right. They're all terrible. The problem is the way it's changed, right? We are cut down initially, so we don't have the opportunity to grow and learn and fix ourselves, right? So if there's the old saying that if Malcolm X would have died at 25, he would have died Detroit Red. He would have never become Malcolm X, right?
Mm-hmm.
What we're seeing is we're not seeing our children grow to the point where they can see things differently, where they can change, where we make the change coming from these things. And I think that's the problem,
but
right?
All of the men you named were good and grown when a lot of the harm that they did happen. Like, good and grown.
I don't know. And what's the other choice? You want to deal with the slave master or the house nigga? They both bad.
Well, house niggas were some of the most rebellious Negroes, so that's one thing.
Yeah.
But what I think, what is this misnomer there is that, like, the choice isn't like that choice is the fucked up choice to begin with, and it's not a rather. It's like, I'd rather that the folks who are doing harm not be harmful. That's white supremacy or people.
But you don't know. You don't know. I remember the first time I got in the studio, and my man Royce always tells the story because we were in the studio and Marshall was there. This is after Marshall's first album, right? Mm-hmm. We're coming out of his first album. We're recording our first album with him, and I had a bunch of girls come to the studio and order champagne and all kind of shit. And MX, he was like, "Yo." He asked Royce, he's like, "Yo, why are all these girls here?" He's like, "I don't know." He's like, "Why are all these girls here?" And I said, "Because we're in a studio session. You're supposed to have girls and champagne." I honestly thought that, and I'm sure it wasn't the most respectful scenario for the even women. That's all I knew. Now, as a father and as a husband, as somebody who grows and has the ability to look back, I would 100% give the exact opposite information. But that's what I knew. The very first record deal I signed, they took us to a strip club and gave us shit. Mm-hmm. Oh, I knew, right? And these weren't black guys. These were white guys. Right? For a long time, I thought that's how the industry worked. And it does for a lot of people, right? Mm-hmm. Part of it is to get us high and drunk and just let us go wild and burn ourselves out. But what happens is we don't get an opportunity to grow. And that's what's hurting us, because you don't get an opportunity for redemption, to look back and say, "Oh my God, I was the most misogynistic man ever. And I thought this is how you treated women." But then I had some daughters and I grew up and I found religion and I decided I didn't want to chase the same things at 45 or 50 as I did at 20.
But most brothers do, right? Like, I think that there's something about power that we're not recognizing here, that, like, even with the aging and knowing better, and you could still choose not to do better, right? Like, that is always an option too, right? Like, that growing up doesn't necessarily mean you mature. Having daughters certainly doesn't mean.
Well, you have to have, it's knowledge, then it's wisdom, then it's understanding, right? You get knowledge. That doesn't mean you know anything. It just means you're aware of it. There's wisdom that you can now put in, you can conceptualize it, but understanding is put it into practice, right? So when you are a man boy or a girl woman, right? These things make sense. It makes sense to know that the power struggle in our community is a man and woman, or same, but there's a commitment to each other, right? Mm-hmm. There's a foundation. There are boundaries. There is things that exist that you can grow from. If I got a girl and I'm cheating with another girl, or I got a girl and I decide I want to cheat with this guy, or vice, it's chaos. And we're building these societies built off chaos, and it's not allowing us to grow. I remember when the Fetty Wap song Trap Queen was at its height, Now my girls live in Fort Lee. They're suburban kids, and I had to sit them down. I was like, "Yo, do you even know what a trap is?" And he was like, "No." And I said, "Okay." So I gave him TIs, which is you either in or dead or jail.
Right.
Right. Now, if here is a black man and he's taking his woman and putting her in the trap with him, then they're both fucked. So who raises the children, right? And so these ideologies, when we popularize things like gangster culture, the trap, so that's a young man's sport. We have to grow up and mature. And unfortunately, because the world we see is so small in these ghettos, it takes us some time to get out and then to kind of look at what we see. And a lot of our executives, a lot of our artists don't get that opportunity because it's fast turnover. The best deals are the newer
No, I definitely think, especially with the artists, I think the executives is a slightly different. I take a slightly different position.
So then who is left? So we got the artists.
I think they're all fucked up. So I'm
right.
like, I'm sure people who were harmed by them are not sad that they're not there. Like, I think we have to be very considerate of, like, you have to want to repair too. And if you actually have not even begun to say, like, I have to be accountable that I was X, Y, or Z, and that in reality, like, just like as somebody who studies violence, most men aren't raping women. Most men aren't beating them. Like, right? Like, and so that's the reality too. So it's not even something they have to grow out of because they actually didn't. And a lot of men from even like those communities that we often want to be like the low income, they didn't have this or didn't have it. They're actually not overly represented in that population of beating or raping women either, right?
No, not at all.
Quite often in this industry, like the seduction of power, like you said, you get that record deal, you get this, like you're not used to people saying no to you anymore, right? And that is a particular kind of flip. But if you're also involved and engaged in and had already misogynistic values or patriarchal values or anti-black or colorist or whatever those things are, those get exacerbated when you have the resources to do certain things.
And you know what? So I think when they come through these doors, they know who are morally and spiritually broken, right? They know who are in need of validation or who would put money over community. Those it's grooming and preying, right?
I mean, the industry is super predatory, right? Like I hands down, like, and I think that's why it doesn't have a chance of surviving in the way that even I would have been, like, even if I were say like at the best moment what I felt in hip hop, like I know that doesn't even exist right now. So
it's not supposed to. Life is supposed to grow
and do things. It won't be, I mean, I'll be dead, but it won't be mine. But like,